So you owe one of these debts, right? It's either you have a mortgage, you have credit cards, you have student loans, or you have personal loans, okay? And so you came to this video because you want to learn something about paying off debt and how I was able to do it, all right? So before we start, what we're going to do in this video, or what I'm going to discuss in this video, is that I'm going to talk about, first of all, some statistics as far as where we are as a people. And we're going to talk about the disadvantages of having debt. And then I'm going to talk about how I paid off $79,000 using the snowball. And then I'm going to touch on Dave Ramsey's baby steps. And then finally, I'm going to talk about my advice as far as how you can pay off debt faster. All right. And so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, some of the statistics, right? And some of these might be outdated as far as a year, right? I got these from CNBC, and Reuters, and other places. And so the year just began 2021. So the data in 2021 is not there. So most of the data I'm going to refer to is data from 2020. Okay. All right. And so the first one, 47% of Americans are carrying credit card debt. Okay. 47%, which means pretty much close to half of the population is carrying credit card debt. Up to 40% of Americans can't pay more than the minimum payment. Now you see, if you're only paying the minimum payment, it's going to take you a long time to get out of debt. Okay, it's going to take you a very, very, very long time. Most of these credit cards, some of them are like 25%, 20%. So anytime at 20%, if you use the rule of 72, it means that debt that you owe, if you're only paying a minimum payment, doubles every 3.5 years. Okay, that's just how it works. All right, then the consumer debt, as you know, as of last year, 2020, okay, the consumer debt hit $14.3 trillion. Okay, $14.3 trillion. American GDP, the GDP is about $23 trillion, and we're talking about consumer debt being $14.3 trillion. That is a lot of money, okay? Americans began 2020 owing more than $1 trillion in credit card debt, according to Wallet Hub. Now, that is a lot of money, okay? Think about it this way. Biden, at the making of this video, they're about to pass a relief bill, okay, of $1.9 trillion. They're going to inject that into the economy to provide relief, you know, because of the pandemic and whatnot. Now, half of that is how much the population owes in credit card debt, okay? And then the Federal Reserve estimates that in quarter three, okay, so that's sometime last year, actually that was sometime quarter three. So quarter three, just depending, I'm assuming this is the regular year, it's not a fiscal year. Okay, so the quarter three will be between June and September. Okay, if it's a fiscal year, that'll be your first quarter. But this time around, I believe they're using quarter three as in June to September. Americans owed more than $1.7 trillion in student loans, according to CNBC. Okay, just 43% of Americans say they could come up with $2,000 for an emergency. You know, if something happened, 43%. Okay, 43% of Americans say they could come up with $2,000, meaning about 60% of Americans cannot come up with $2,000 in case of an emergency. They do not have that money saved in their account somewhere. So 60% are just a paycheck away from trouble. If they miss the paycheck, they'll be in trouble. Okay, because that's what that translates to. That 60%, I can comfortably say 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. If you can't come up with $2,000 in case of an emergency, you are living paycheck to paycheck. So you miss a paycheck, and you're in trouble. Okay, so let's talk about the disadvantages of having debt, because there's nothing good about debt. I've been there before. And I know what you're going through. If you have debt, I know what it's like. I know what it feels like, and I want to share with you some of the thoughts that I think about. I think are the disadvantages of having debt. Now, when we talk about debt, for the sake of this video, I'm not talking about leveraging. Okay, where you borrow money to start a business, where you borrow money to invest in real estate. Okay, I'm talking about consumer debt, debt that you use on your personal, needs, or something that you consume. I'm talking strictly consumer debt. Okay, credit cards, whatever it is that is used for you. All right, not business debt. I'm not talking about business debt here. I'm strictly talking about consumer debt. Okay, so let's talk about the disadvantages of having debt. Okay, it was I believe it was the notorious B.I.G. who says more money, more problems. I think it's Puff Daddy, that song from back in the day, more money, more problems. Okay, now this particular situation is not no more money, more problems. It's more debt, more problems. I believe when you have a lot of debt, you have problems. Okay, and some of these include debt robs you of options. When you have debt, you don't have too many options. I remember working at a job. Okay, and I had situations there with my boss where it was a toxic environment. Okay, I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. Because why? If I leave, I'm not guaranteed a job somewhere else. And if I get a job, there was so many uncertainties because I just couldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have the option. I wanted to quit so bad. I wanted to quit so bad, but I couldn't. You know what I'm saying? Because I was depending on this job. I was depending on this job to pay off my bills, and debt just kept me without options. You know what I'm saying? And so the debt can cause you stress and medical problems, which it did. You know what I'm saying? Every time I looked left and right, all I could think of was just this debt around my neck. How do I get from underneath this thing? This thing weighs me down. You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking, you know what? I want to go back to grad school, do my MBA. Okay, so what's gonna happen to my debt? Do I just quit work and go pursue this thing for 2 years, or what do I do? Okay, it limited my options, and the more I thought about that, I got sick, felt sick every time, felt sick. You know what I'm saying? And then debt destroys relationships. I remember I owed a personal loan to somebody. Every time this person called or I heard from them, all I could think about was just the debt. They're probably calling me about the debt. They're probably calling me about the debt. It was a sick feeling. You know what I'm saying? Owing somebody money. And you might concur, you might have been in a situation where you owe somebody, that sick feeling you have. It's like, it just messes up the dynamics of a relationship, especially if that individual happens to be a friend or a family member. All right, that gives you a false sense of success. Most people live their lives, when you look from the outside, it looks like they're doing fine, right? They drive luxury cars, foreign cars, they live in a nice house, and they have all these nice toys. They have a facade of success, but really when you get underneath the hood, you find that all that stuff is borrowed stuff. Okay, they're making payments on those things. Okay, they're making payments on the cars, they're making payments on the toys and everything else. You see the clothes, the nice clothes. They're making payments at Macy's, they're making payments at Nordstrom, they're making payments at, name it, Jesse Penny, wherever they get these clothes from. They're making payments on those things. It gives you a false sense of success. Just because you can tap into credit cards, that just because you can use plastic, you think you're successful, but that's not really, that's not reality. You know what I'm saying? And so debt robs you of your future income. When you borrow money and you're making payments, those payments could have been money that you'd have deployed as capital to generate for you, gains as far as in the market or whatever you put the money to gain your interest instead of you paying the interest. Right, so it robs you of the opportunity to be able to accumulate wealth. Debt causes you to pay more than the item cost due to the interest. And so, let's say you buy something for $10,000, they charge you an interest of 6%, whatever it is. Of course, you're gonna pay more than the $10,000 that thing costs, right? Because of the interest, the interest you're paying on it. So, debt causes you to pay more than something is worth. The other thing is debt can prevent you from building wealth. I touched on this earlier. It's very hard for you to build wealth when you're making payments. Okay, even when an opportunity presents itself, you can't really do anything about it because what? You're bound. You have so many obligations that you can't even put money together to be able to do something. You know what I'm saying? The reason 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck is not because they can't afford $2,000. It's because they have so many payments. Okay, we as a society have so many payments that what? We have to service those obligations, and therefore we have nothing left when an emergency strikes. When an emergency strikes, we go more and more into debt because what? We're gonna swipe. You know what I'm saying? It's an epidemic. It's just something that is part of the system, and we need to break from that at some point. We need to break from that if we're gonna be free. If we're gonna be a free people, right? And so, debt may prevent you from owning a home. Debt to income ratio, right? So that might supposed to be actually may. Then the debt can hurt your credit score. Debt does hurt your credit score when you have a lot of items on your credit report that, and your income to no, actually this is not an income to debt ratio. When when you compare the debt, okay, your debt to credit ratio, if you almost actually this is a credit utilization. If your credit utilization is more than 10%, that does not register well with credit bureaus. It might knock your credit down, and I know this because at one point my credit was knocked down because I owed too much. I'd maxed out my credit cards to the tune of 100%. Not just 80%, literally 100%, even more than 100%, because some of them, you charged interest and you don't pay that interest, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the epiphany. When I was owing money, okay, what happened to me? There came a point where I had to make a decision that I didn't want to live this way. Okay, and what brought me to that point is I read scripture where it says that the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is a slave to the lender. Okay, this is true. This is very, very, very true. The borrower is a slave to the lender. When you have a mortgage, okay, it feels like that's your house. But actually, the lender owns that house, and they can take it after 3 months if you don't make a payment on that thing. Okay? You're bound to the banker. When you have a car that you're making payments on, and you don't make a payment on that thing, the banker will come and get that thing. When we're making payments, we're literally a slave to the lender. Okay, why? Because the lender, who is the boss, determines what happens to an asset if we don't meet the obligation. If we didn't owe any money, we don't have to worry about somebody coming in and getting something. The fact that we don't have the freedom makes us bound to whoever lent us money, right? And then Paul of Tarsus, talking to the Romans, once said to the disciples and the believers in Rome, he says, listen, owe no man anything. Okay? Why? Freedom. When you owe somebody something, you owe them. Have you ever had an experience where, every time you do something for somebody, people say no? The reason people say no because they don't want to owe. The law of reciprocity. You know what I'm saying? The law of reciprocity. If you read Cialdini, in his book, The Art of Persuasion, the law of reciprocity. Whenever you do something for somebody, they feel obligated to do something back. Okay, they it's like they owe you. You know what I'm saying? And so you don't want to owe anybody anything. You don't want to owe them money. You don't want to, because what they lord over you. The dynamic of that relationship is all of a sudden changes. Okay, it's no longer friendship or whatever it is. It's master slave. You know what I'm saying? And I say that with all due respect, based on what we just read, that the borrower is a slave to the lender. The moment that happens, this relationship is messed up because one of you becomes a master and the other person becomes a slave. Okay, so you have Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and everybody else, they have people in shackles. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because they are the master, and everybody else making payments is a slave. They call the shots. Okay, and then, anyway, it was Paul of Tarsus talking to his young disciple Timothy, who said, "Listen, Timothy, but having sustenance and covering will be content with these." Once you learn contentment, you realize and say you don't have to be like the Joneses. You don't have to follow the Joneses. You don't have to look rich. You don't have to have this image of being rich and then inside you're dying because you have this load over your neck. And once I realized that, I said, you know what? I need to pay off this $79,000, whatever it takes. I'm gonna have to get rid of it. So I can be free. I want to experience what it feels like to have that freedom. And I remember a lot of times I used to watch Dave Ramsey, and I'll listen to these people and make those dead scream. I think they're called dead screams, dead free screams. I think that's what they are. And I would hear them scream, "I am debt free," and I'd be like, man, that's gonna be me one day. I might not go to Nashville to Dave Ramsey, but for sure I'm gonna scream, "I am debt free" one day in my living room, and I think that's gonna be awesome if that can happen. It's gonna give me a lot of options. Anyway, that's pretty much what happened to me, and now I'm gonna go into explaining to you the common methods that you can use to pay off debt. Right? You have the avalanche method, where you pay the highest interest to the lowest interest, and then you have the debt snowball, where you pay the lowest balance to the highest balance. Okay, now people who do math, okay, have a tendency to want to do the avalanche because it makes more sense mathematically. Okay, it's paying off the highest interest, because anything with the highest interest, of course, is going to cost you more. But debt is not a math problem. Okay, if we, with my background as my technical background, if we can solve math, okay, the highest level of math there is, we're able to solve those kind of math, we shouldn't be in debt. All right, and therefore, you have doctors and lawyers, okay, and engineers who are in debt. It's not that they can't solve math. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, the issue of debt is not an issue of math. It's an issue of behavior. You know what I'm saying? And because it's an issue of behavior, it can only be corrected by correcting the behavior and not coming up with better differential equations or solving equations. Okay? And therefore, in that regard, the debt avalanche really doesn't hold water. And so the method that works, now, you can use the debt avalanche and it can work for you. You know what I'm saying? But the one that I've seen with the best results, the one that I've seen produce results even for me, you know what I'm saying, was the debt snowball, where you pay the lowest balance to the highest balance. What are the benefits of the debt snowball? There's one thing, the thing that's built within it is momentum. When you pay off that little debt and you go on to the next one, and you get more momentum, okay, and then you feel like you're making progress. It just feels like you're gonna get there. You know what I'm saying? You knock out the little one, then you go to the high one, then you keep on going. Before you know it, you're there. Okay, and so what I'm gonna show you here is what the debt avalanche would look like. All right, you have all this debt from the highest interest to the lowest. Right, you've listed them on the interest is on the far right here. You've listed them from the highest to the lowest, and you're gonna knock them out one by one. Doesn't really matter what the order is. You're just gonna knock them out based on what? The highest interest to the lowest interest. Okay, now the problem. Look at this situation, right? So I was owing money to a friend. Okay, 0 interest. Now think about it. If I'm gonna take long to knock that thing out, and I'm making minimum payments, and this thing's gonna take me a long time, that relationship is gonna suffer. Okay, now you're gonna tell me, hey, we can adjust A, B, C, and D. My point is, you just don't wanna do this. Okay, pay off the little one first, and then go through the order. That's what I did. Okay, I followed the snowball, and it was very, very, very inspired by Dave Ramsey's baby steps. Although I did not follow that the Dave Ramsey baby step to the T, because my circumstances could not allow to follow that pattern for one reason or the other, but I use it as a guide to be able to pay off the debt that I have here. So you can see the bulk of the money. Graduated from college. I'm excited. I'd spent most of the credit cards on living expenses in college, because it just didn't matter. I didn't understand anything about debt. I didn't understand anything about personal finance. I just did what everybody else said. I followed the system where, consume, consume, consume. I followed the system even after I graduated. I said, you know what, I deserve a car. I've graduated from engineering school. I deserve a car. I should buy this thing because it's a gift to myself. I went and purchased a vehicle, 18,500 with 19.8 interest. Why? Because my credit was messed up. After using all that debt, my credit suffered. At the time when I was graduating, my credit was like 504. Okay, and so I made a decision. Like I said, I'm gonna attack this debt. I used the snowball little by little. Went for the small one first, and kept on going. And so it took me 5 years to actually tackle this debt. Okay, and so when I began attacking the debt, at the time I was just making $67,000. Okay, my credit score was like 504. Okay, it felt like I wasn't making any progress. Okay, by the time I was living in California, the standard of living in California is very high. Everything costs a lot in California. I was barely surviving on that $67,000 salary. Okay, and so it was difficult. So my main thing I did was focus on what? On making more money. Okay, on increasing my value to the marketplace, because I learned that from Jim Rohn. Increase your value to the marketplace. Okay, I did not cut Starbucks. I did not cut going out, eating out. Any of those things that I like to do, I didn't cut them. What I realized, and say, okay, how much of these? How much they cost? They cost so much. If I can create enough value in the marketplace, I can increase my salary. And what happened is, when I was working that job, within 6 months, I had produced and created value for my company that I got. I got a $15,000 raise, I believe. In 6 months. Within 6 months, after understanding this and creating value, I got a raise for $15,000 because it's a project that I was working on that was able to actually cut costs for the company by $1 million. Okay, and so then kept on working hard, and my salary kept on going up, which also involved bonuses coming in. But I focused more on creating value, like having laser focus on creating value in the marketplace. And by the time I was in year 5, I'd increased my value in the marketplace, and I mean by that my job, to $95,000. Okay, and that's how I was able to knock out this thing. But my if you're gonna take away anything from this, is it's very important, okay, to work on increasing value. And the way Dave Ramsey explains this, he talks about things like, hey, make sure you get an Uber, you start doing Uber, you start just find any little job you can find. You know what I'm saying? I agree with that. Okay, increase your value in the marketplace. Go after making more than, oh, you're gonna cut this, you're gonna sell your cat, you're gonna do all the kind of stuff. That stuff works, but just not for me. For me, what works is coming up with a plan, realizing and say, where can I get the best return on this time or this investment that I'm making in myself? Because see, the greatest investment I have, or the greatest investment you can make, is an investment in yourself. You know what I'm saying? To me, an investment in myself cash flows than any other investment out there in the marketplace. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. Making sure that I create value in the marketplace cash flows more than any stock. It cash flows more than Tesla stock. Cash flows more than any stock I can think of there. You know what I'm saying? Had I deployed money into a Tesla stock, let's say $1,000, I don't think it would have netted me the same return I was able to gain within 5 years compared to investing in myself. Okay, that's a different topic anyway. And so that's what happened there. And then let's talk about the Dave Ramsey baby steps here. So what we have with Dave Ramsey's baby steps, he talks about having $1,000 emergency fund first step, and then pay off your debt using the snowball. And then see, it talks about $1,000 to start off as an emergency fund. We just read somewhere where it says most Americans do not have $2,000. 60% don't have $2,000 saved. All right, right there we have a problem with $1,000. Okay, it works. Okay, with inflation. Now, these ideas have been around for a long time. I think it's time we need to adjust that to, let's say, $2,000 maybe. I don't know, but it stayed like that every time since the first time I read the Total Money Makeover like a decade ago. It still stayed this $1,000. Maybe it needs to move to $2,000. Who knows? But anyway, pay off debt using the snowball, like I told you about, and have 3 to 6 months of expenses. If you have 3 to 6 months, it takes care of that $2,000 that we talked about initially. And then 15% household income should be invested for retirement, and then college fund, and pay off your home early and build wealth and give, right? And then my advice, finally, is focus on increasing your income. That's what I talked about earlier. And have an abundance mindset, okay? This idea of you got to cut off coffee, you got to cut off this, you got to cut off that, you got to cut off that. Don't think about it that way. So listen, how am I going to be able to afford all this stuff and be able to get rid of my debt? How do I increase value in the marketplace? Okay, how do I earn more? How do I increase that? What value can I create? You know what I'm saying? Not taking away. What value can I create and still maintain the same lifestyle or even better? You know what I'm saying? I spend my energy trying to figure out how I can add, how I can create more value than doing what? Than subtracting. What needs to go? Okay, cable goes. Oh, that goes. Oh, that goes. Oh, we're going to cancel. That's what everybody thinks. But I think, look, how can I do this and still be able to do what I want? What's the motivation? You know what I'm saying? I have to live. You only live once. But at the same time, you got to pay off debt. And so my method, you can have your own method, right? Everybody is entitled to their own opinion and how they do things. My method is create value. Create value, and value will take care of you. Okay? Instead of eliminating Starbucks, add more money. The same thing I talked about. Don't invest while paying off debt. Do not invest because you know what? Like, I mentioned in my other video, when you pay off debt, the increase in wealth is instant. You know what I'm saying? When you invest, there's a risk that investment you've made might just disappear. Everybody talks about, okay, you might gain interest, or you might invest at a higher return. That higher return is not guaranteed. That's why it's called an investment. There's risk involved. That investment that you thought, you know what, I'm going to double my money, might just end up being zero. But when you pay off debt, you're guaranteed. Every time you pay, it goes down. Every time you pay, your wealth increases. And that's why paying off debt is better than investing, regardless of what the return is. And invest in yourself instead. That's what I talked about earlier. Invest yourself in you instead of doing anything else. Forget about keeping up with the Joneses. Don't worry what the Joneses think about you. If you drive a rugged car, so be it. Who cares? If you don't dress in nice clothes and everything else, you don't shop where they go, you don't eat out, you don't do all this fancy stuff that people expect you to do, who cares? Just focus. Be laser focused on what? On paying off your debt. It's going to pay off. So guys, if you learned something from this, please leave me a comment. If you've not subscribed up to this point, I ask you to subscribe to this channel. I'll be posting more videos like this on personal finance. And if you can like this, if you can like this video, that would be great. I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good one.